We all know you've been through some difficulties regarding some protesters they showing up in front of your house. Could you tell us what have you been through?
To be really candid, it has been very stressful at times because besides being the mayor, I'm also still first and foremost a mother, a wife, a daughter. I think much like the rest of the nation, there's a lot of people who are very already frustrated because of many different issues, whether it's a shelter in place because of COVID-19 or just frustrations with some of the political unrest and systematic racism that's been felt by some of the members of the community, in particular those who are Black. And it's been probably further amplified because of the fact that people are on social media. And so you're seeing scenes play out throughout the country where people have gone out to give demonstrations. Some have been more peaceful than others. We in the city of Fremont have had 11 demonstrations, and I've walked in about 7 of the 11. One of the first ones I was at, there was some controversy as to the positioning, because this started a couple years ago where some people felt that the way to amplify awareness of the injustices was by kneeling. In particular, not just kneeling on when I think of prayer, but in terms of one knee. And so on one of the first demonstrations that we went to, I did not choose to kneel. There are many reasons why. One is personal because of my own personal faith as a Christian, but also because the fact that at that moment, when we went out there, it was unfortunate that people don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but we had gotten a text saying that they would like for myself and the police chief and others to come out, take off our badge, kneel, and resign. And so that was not likely going to happen in terms of our positioning. And there was also some just unfortunate, like when we came out there, the tenor of the crowd was not super positive. They were saying things like kneel bitch and other things that were not, I would say, things that would bring us together and closer. I had offered to pray with them, and at subsequent meetings, I had attended those. And I did end up praying at my third one that I went to with one of the pastors who was local here in the church. I want to make sure people understand it was meant to be something that we were doing together, because I certainly feel the pain of the community. And I also recognize the right for people to express their feelings and concerns. But some of it has now deviated in terms of where it's gone in the conversation. And that's what you were asking about, is that I've had people now coming to my home. And generally, I would say for most of us as politicians, we are happy to serve our community and happy to be accessible. But everybody, I think, deserves to have some respite. And most people, that's their home. And with our families, and in particular, in my case, I have children too, I think that there is a need to have some separation of that. While I have chosen to run as a public official, and I'm very honored to have that privilege and to represent our community and to be out there in our community, often with many different events that are faith-based, community-based, civic-based. But I don't think my family has to be. They know that when you run, it's the entire family that's part of this organization or trying to help out. But I think there still needs to be a separation on the feelings. Trying to get your communication across in terms of what you feel or how you want people to respect or come to the table and talk to you is much better if you're not trying to intimidate or harass people. And the event started when it came to my house about 3 weeks ago. It started off fairly positive. There were just people chanting and dancing. But as the evening wore on and they were hoping to see me or to get their feedback or their confirmation of what they were hoping for ultimately as a goal, which is to defund our police or to move funding, and trying to explain to people, we have heard you. We care about you. We're having we have a town hall at the city. We're having 6 community meetings. We're going to follow up with another town hall and have discussions is important. And also trying to explain to people the process. I understand people look at the budget and just say, why doesn't this happen this way? But they need to understand, where does funding come from? How can it be properly allocated? what are areas that we can't have jurisdiction on. For example, one of the areas they keep talking to us about is school resource officers. And those are officers who are serving in the community there to help in terms of maintaining the order in the school, or in case of there's need for support for discipline. And over the years that I served on the school board, unfortunately, there have been times where there have been some fights and at times even weapons. And so it helps to have someone on the secondary level to be there, not just because of enforcement. And that's one of the things that I think people get that mixed message or confusion. They're not there just to police. They're there to be part of the community. And it really has helped us over the years when we're talking about situations and they're trying to understand, like if somebody's getting bullied or there's domestic violence or partner violence, because they're on the school grounds all the time, they are part of the community. They go to the football games, they go to the sports and events with the kids. And when we've needed to have somebody to talk to for the students, oftentimes, the students reach out to them and say, can I tell you about my situation? So as I was saying before, the things like that, they were asking for changes, but we don't have the direct decision-making. Those actually fall within the school board. We have a contract and we're happy to provide the services and partner with the school district, but the contract itself is actually from the school district. And I also feel for their feelings of wanting to pay teachers well or to compensate people. But the funding that's given to the city is not meant for schools. The schools, and when they're looking at our budget, they say you're spending, $90 million on the police. But what they're not seeing is they're spending $320 million on education. So they're not looking at that piece. They're just saying what's within our city's budget. And if you were to compare a better understanding of what the allocations are, why they're designed that way, which is what we're trying to have these conversations on, they would better understand why some of their solutions are not feasible, not legal, and what are possible options of things that we can do together.
So speaking of conversation, have you ever had any conversation either beforehand or after the events happening in front of your house?
With the community, yes. Certainly.
With the protester, the people.
Protesters have actually come on to my council meetings and public comments. We normally don't engage in conversation there. They usually repeat the same messaging, which is they said that there's 1,000 of us that showed up. We would demand that you make the change. They also need to realize that while it's certainly a lot of 1,000 people, there's 250,000 people almost in our city, and that they're differing opinions. And one of the things that's also hard to be listened to is if we're having a town hall, which I mentioned earlier, we had a big town hall meeting. We had almost 890 people come. And there's a lot of differences of opinions. But one of the things that was disappointing to me to see is that while you want us to treat you like an adult or listen to your considerations, it's not very professional when other people are talking and they may have a different opinion and you're flushing toilets, you're coughing on the phone, you're interrupting people, you're insulting people's children.
So you mentioned people flushing toilets during the town hall session?
Yes, we had some people breaking through the Zoom call. And part of it, I think technology is a blessing and technology is a curse at times unless you know how to manage it. And being Zoom is a relatively new technology. We had as a Zoom meeting, and that means some people can unmute. We always tell people, unless you're speaking, please mute yourself. But we did have issues with people repeatedly coming off of the phone or coming off of the mute and doing some extra sound work.
Where were you when the protesters showing up in front of your house and do their stuff? And where were your family? And how did they feel about this?
I was not there because I was watching it remotely from my security video, and I could hear and see everything. My family wanted to stay there because they wanted to make sure our house was fine. Feelings initially, I thought nothing really seriously would happen. You would respect that there is private property versus public property being the street, the sidewalks, private property being my own house property, the land, the side, the doors, the garage or driveways are not public property. Most of the times it was pretty respectful. You can broadcast your slideshow or whatever on my garage door. But when you started chalking all over the street and the sidewalk, that's public property, which we'd have to clean later. But they chalked our driveway. And what was more disturbing is not the chalking itself, because that's something that comes off. It's the fact of the choice of verbs or words that they use. Things like Asian silence equals violence, or white supremacy, fight white supremacy and Asian complicity. And the first time they wrote some of it in English. The second time they went so far as to write it even in Chinese to make sure
I saw that. I saw even worse thing is like a derogatory word, right?
Yeah.
Yes, there was very derogatory statements said about all of my family. Some of the comments, sadly, were racist, sexist, intimidation, threatening, and minimum bullying.
So obviously people are very concerned about your safety and security. So throughout this two demonstrations, protest.
There have been three, yes.
Yeah.
Two at my house and one at the city manager's.
I mean, a lot of people wonder, where was the police?
Part of why this very demonstration was happening, and it's funny that you should say, why were the police? The police were nearby in terms of they were available if they needed them. And I hope to never need them. But I think part of the reason why they were doing the demonstrations, much like you've seen in other cities, is to get the police there. And so they want the police to come. They would like to probably get, I heard on tape the first time there was a gentleman from legal aid who was giving them advice on how to legally protest your elected, and if necessary, how to legally get out of jail. What can you do up to so that you can still get out of jail? And I was like, okay, I thought legal aid, from my perspective, and I've supported them in the past with donations in other areas, is for the fact when people don't have the funding to provide legal assistance, which is needed for all people to be able to have a fair opportunity for trial. But I didn't think that it was there to coach people on how to legally protest. And so it was a very, very eye-opening experience for me, honestly. To be really candid, it has been very stressful at times because I am always, besides being the mayor, I'm also still first and foremost a mother, a wife, a daughter. And so these types of situations bring added stress to any family. I don't think any of us as family members with our community would want people harassing or intimidating or trying to purposely incite reactions from your family members. And part of it is social media. I call it the cowardice of the keyboard, because you sit there and you film it. You just want to get the gotcha. I got you something, and I can now make it viral and try to, make myself well known from this one moment in time. But what is very dangerous at those moments is that you sit there as a family member and people judge off of so little piece. They don't see what happened before. They don't know what happens afterwards. And it's a real snapshot of just a moment. And so that's what sometimes, whether it's in the press, media, or other areas, people are looking for just that perfect, moment.
In that group, and do you know who are they? Where they come from?
Actually, I do, because they have, on the second protest, they had one of their, I won't say advertisements, but one of their flyers to create awareness, listed all the organizations. And one of the organizations, frankly, I had the opportunity to visit because they were actually very involved last year when we talked about helping the homeless in the Navigation Center. And so last fall, I had visited one of their art shows to try to raise money for feeding the homeless. And I was really honored to get the chance to go talk to people. I want to be approachable. I want to be someone who can go out and listen to our constituents' concerns. It is kind of unfortunate that it's been only less than a year, so about 9 months. And right now they're less than happy with me. I think what happens right now that you'll see in politics and everywhere, people want you to agree with them 100% of the time, if possible, because they would like you to have a twin, a melding of minds. But the reality is what's so important for us as a conversation, a country and community, is that there are going to be differences of opinions. I have differing opinions with my husband and children. It doesn't mean I don't love them, but it means that we have to come together and say, okay, we have different opinions. What are we going to do to work on things or to compromise, to come to some discussion? If we cannot have any sort of civil discussion and it's my way or the highway, then it doesn't really let us progress.
You know somebody personally in that group.
Oh, yes.
How can they look at you? I mean, do they dare to even face-to-face have this conversation with you?
I'll be honest. I've been serving, and this year will be my 5th election. So I've been serving for almost 20 years. And I've been involved with schools, with adults, with community organizations, with cultural organizations. I'd like to say it's a reflection of just because of COVID-19. But what I'm seeing right now is sometimes the tenor by which we address one another. There is a lack of kindness sometimes. And I was going to say that while we're trying to be careful and care for all the people, we should also care for ourselves and care for others. And so that's something that even if I have a difference of opinions with others, I think that there's a certain modicum, a basic degree of humanity by which you want to treat others. And right now, that's not always the case.
For the people who devote their lives in public service and to a life of service, getting treated this way personally, having your family impacted that way, certainly discourages and intimidates a lot of people from wanting to get into public service. And that's a very unfortunate.
It is. There was a question earlier about, did I know some of the protesters? Not only did I know those from that day, but coming to our meetings lately, it has been very hard. I would say more painful than my kneeling on the asphalt that day and getting some minor burns was by far hearing from children or people that I've helped raise or worked with in the community who had some extremist views, but not really understanding. Things like, whose house is this? This is our house. And I'm like, it's not your house because you didn't pay for this. But they're thinking that they paid my incredible salary for all these years. And actually for the 6 years I served on the school board, I took a salary of $0. I donated my entire salary back to the school district and the community. And while it's not a tremendous amount, it is over 5, almost 6 figures of income that I gave up to straight donations back to the community. I have been paid since I've been as a council member and mayor, but again, as a mayor, I make a salary of about $45,000 a year. There are some benefits. There are some other stipends for events and things that I travel to, but it is not the reason why people serve as electeds. Talking to so many electeds, I think by far the reason why we choose to serve, or at least the reason I've chosen to serve, is that I love my community. It's somewhere that I've chosen to invest 26 years of my life. I have a choice on where to work. I had a choice on where to raise my family. And when I looked around, Fremont was the place I chose to make my home. And I didn't just choose to make it my home. I chose to make an investment in it, both in the education, in the civic engagement, in the interfaith community, as well as in particular now as a city. And in these times, it's already so stressful. I have not had a day off since March. And certainly there's a lot of other personal things that go on in our lives. And I'm in the sandwich generation. I have parents that are getting older and sometimes have health issues. And myself at times, much like any other human being, feels stress. And so I just ask people to consider us as being humans, that we're all here. We're trying to work on these solutions to help everything happen, from being physically healthy, mentally healthy, so healthy mind, healthy economy. But we are stronger when we work together. We're stronger when we listen to one another and when we pull together. I really hope that this is what we can see in the next few months. This is not going to be something that's immediately solved or resolved, whether it's on the education front, the civic front, or in our business economic front. I hate to say this, that I think that right now, if you look at the numbers for COVID-19, they are continually rising still in California. You look at the unemployment and the needs for some businesses that are shutting down to be able to restand, but restand safely. Those are greater than ever. And I'm honored at this point to be here in this seat. I'm privileged to be able to help serve our community, along with my council members, along with the staff, and along with our community providing their support. And so I can do much more and be more effective as your leader or as a council if we're focused on the needs that we have for the community as a whole right now, rather than trying to incite violence or create havoc. It really was something that's critical for us.
You are actually due for a re-election. And so as of today, we have seen no challenger to you at the moment. I think that's a great testament to the great job that you have done.
I don't know if I would say it's a testament to my abilities in itself. I think that hopefully it's some credit to the fact that I'm working hard. But I will say, I just looked over the history of Fremont from 1977 till now. We have never had a mayoral election unopposed, ever. And so it would be a first for us. I think that in some ways, the people that are causing the demonstrations or wanting to demonstrate, saying we need a change, are also at the same time unaware or unexpectedly also scaring people from wanting to run, because people then are probably like, do I want everyone to come to my house and threaten my family or to intimidate me? And is it worth it for $45,000 a year? Because I will tell you that if you calculate my hourly, it's so funny. We always have these discussions on minimum wage, but for sure I make far less than minimum wage.
So do you think that the way they approach, the way they try to effect change is actually helpful to their objective, achieving their ends?
To effect change and to get people to listen, it means coming to the table. And unfortunately for the discussion that we talked about, which helped incite this discussion or these demonstrations, was about the budget. For the city of Fremont, when we talk about the budget, we start the discussion throughout the whole year. Like right now, we just set our budget in June, July timeframe, but then we will revisit it again in September to see how we're doing in terms of what's happened economically, what's happened health-wise in our community, what are some of the other needs? Do we have to maybe make further cuts? And then starting in September, we wrap up last year's because it ends the fiscal year in June, July timeframe. So then we start revisiting what happened last year. How did we look at what we anticipated for budget? What actually happened? What are the variances? What are areas that we want to put as priorities? And in January, we have a retreat and we talk about our city's goals. Where are our focus right now? Our top 3 values or 3, and 10 things that we want to work on this year. And when we go through that and we look at the budget assumptions, we look at the governor's preliminary budget in January, we're able to start crafting that discussion. So before we had that meeting in June where all these people came for the final vote, we actually had probably about 5 or 6 meetings leading to that. And that would have been the time where people get engaged and get involved. And I would have loved to see people, even so much as a week before that, we had a meeting and nobody showed up. And then all of a sudden the vote time, everybody comes out of nowhere. And so it'd be nice to have people participating on a regular basis, because civics is not a short game. I think it's something that you want to be involved with long-term to see true results.
Thanks for your time.
So
and thanks, Charles, for joining us. And keep up the good work, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Composed with those 3, I don't know, that's Washington, D.C.'s picture.
Yes.
Where's the picture of the city of Fremont?
Oh, no, this was done way before my time. This is something that was hanging here before me. And so it was 2 mayors ago, and we just haven't changed it. It was the furniture, but that's the first time it's changed in 5 mayors or 4 mayors. So that's
a good sign.
But even then, it wasn't thrown out. It went to another office. It went to our attorney's office.